Hello everyone, welcome to MEGAFOON Sport. It's time for Formula One Focus. It's my pleasure to welcome back Sasha Martinengo. Hello Sasha.
Hi, Beer. So good to be with you. Very exciting. The season is starting. Had a great chat before the season. So yeah, looking forward to lots of chats this year and hopefully a fabulous season.
Yeah, we're all glad the racing started again, but off the track stuff is drawing all the attention. You know, we'll talk about the testing and some of the first practices and the likes just now. But we just thought Christian Horner was safely back in his job. He was exonerated and everything went quite well. And then something happened today that caused a bit of an upset. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, very interestingly, a post came out that said that a Google Drive document has been sent to various heads of Formula One teams and the head of the FIA and to hundreds of journalists about whatever happened between Christian Horner and the person within the Red Bull organization. So everyone got, I suppose, overexcited about it in the sense that those people who like rumor mongering. But a statement came out a couple of minutes ago saying it's all nonsense and it's a fabricated and fake account. So whatever comes out doesn't look like it's going to be or have any merit.
So, that's fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, who knows where it is? But you know, I just think well done to the independent litigators and lawyers for resolving the issue. MVA, you and I don't know what's happened behind closed doors, but I mean, you know, we've been around long enough to understand that certain things should stay behind closed doors. And it's resolved. And the whole thing about it is it's resolved. He's exonerated from it. He's basically said that there is no misdoing, but the applicant does have a leave to appeal. That's the most we know. We don't have any other details what it's about, whether it's got to do with a female employee and lewd conduct, or whether it's about aggressive management style. I have no idea.
Yeah, no, I don't think we'll ever know what the thing was. But interestingly enough, Horner came out today and said, yeah, Red Bull has never been stronger. Now, I would question that. I mean, somebody obviously leaked this thing that came today. Somebody leaked these allegations. We don't know if these allegations were made up. There must be something going on inside Red Bull, some sort of a power struggle. Is it Marco? Is it Jos?
Yes.
What do you think is behind all this? Have you any idea there?
I don't have any idea. You know, same as when we spoke the last time. I can only say that there's a power struggle between Christian Horner and whether it's Matsushita's son, whether it's Helmut Marko. Somewhere along the line, somebody's created some mischievous stuff over the past couple of weeks. I'm sure we will learn more. Perhaps not immediately, but I think we will learn more over the the next couple of months, or perhaps even the next couple of years.
What was interesting for me yesterday is the BBC asked Max twice in the press conference whether he stood by or believed in Horner, whatever, and he dodged the question twice. I don't know if you saw the article that Andrew Benson wrote. I think there's some trouble in that kind of a relationship. I don't want to dwell on it too much. One thing that I did notice just now is that Toto is now jumping up and down and saying, oh, but they must be more transparent and he wants to know what's happening. And I think Zach Brown also had something to say about that. Do they have any right to do that, do you think?
I don't think they do have any right to do that, but I mean, you know what? There isn't a lot of love lost between Zach Brown, Christian Horner, and Toto Wolff. They are amicable with each other, but believe you me, I don't think they have dinner too often together. And I think Max is just being guided very well from his PR team, from his management team, to basically stay out of it, because you know anything that he says, if something else does come out, no one can attack him for taking anybody's sides. He's just being very, very neutral, and I think it's probably the wisest choice at this stage.
When we mentioned Zach, it opened up the opportunity for me to talk about. He was the one most loudly complaining about the fact that RB is so close to Red Bull, and in first practice today, RB was the fastest, and it was by a couple of milliseconds. But the point is that they were right up there. We didn't know what the conditions were. I know it was very windy and the like, but this RB definitely seems to be faster than last year's car. And I I see a couple of people saying, yeah, Zach must be, what's the word, spitting out his coffee at the moment, seeing that.
Yeah, I think, you know, every car is going to be a lot better than last year. I think everyone learned from what Red Bull has done, even though Red Bull have gone on a completely different tangent. And don't forget, RB or Visa Cash App or whatever they are called, have got a brand new sponsor. So there's nothing wrong with first free practice session of the year in the world of Formula One. The whole world is watching, and what happens? Your car's the top of the timesheet. So, you know, there could be some very clever strategy calls from RB as well. But I think, you know, Daniel Ricciardo, just staying on that team, is going to have a completely different zest for life. This year, he knows that he's got a chance. There are seats opening up all over the place come 2025. So he definitely wants to go out there and put a marker down and show that he's much better than Yuki Tsunoda, and he deserves to be in one of the top teams again.
Yeah, Albert Marcus said this week that one of those two are in line to take over Sergio Perez's seat. I don't know what Sergio thinks about that, but he said it's either going to be Yuki or Daniel. Seems to have dismissed Sergio already. I don't think they'll go with Ricciardo, in my honest opinion, because I think he might just be a little bit too old. Yuki, I think, is a bit too erratic, maybe linking up with Aston Martin in the future. And I'm going towards Liam Lawson somewhere, somehow appearing somewhere. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you as well. You know, a great respect to Daniel Ricciardo. We love him as an individual. He's a great racing driver on his day. Would you take that gamble? You know, he's not Fernando Alonso. He's got 2 world championship titles behind him. He's Daniel Ricciardo has won some good races in a very, very competitive Red Bull car. So I side with you. You know, Red Bull have to be a little bit careful though, MV, because don't forget they have made mistakes with Alguersuari, with putting Gasly, with Albon too early in that car, Kvyat, etc. So now we saw how well Liam Lawson did in those couple of races during 2023. But then we also saw Nick de Vries, how well he did for Williams, and then he didn't last very long at AlphaTauri. So it's a sort of poison chalice to get the seat at Red Bull. It can backfire terribly on you. I would think a guy like Liam Lawson, put him in AlphaTauri or RB first, and then give him a shot to go up. So there could be a transition year for Red Bull next year, you know, and maybe they do sign Daniel Ricciardo just for 1 season and then see what happens. I'm not sure. It's going to be very tricky.
In the test last week, RB with the, I don't know, clone of the Merc of last year. I don't know if they want to try and prove a point here. So listen, you couldn't make this concept work. We'll show you how it's done. They were miles ahead of everybody. But in the practice rounds today, the Red Bull seem to be a little bit off the pace. I see there were some suggestions that maybe they didn't turn up the engine as much as they wanted to or could have. But the team that impressed me today was Mercedes. They didn't look too bad. And I wonder if Lewis is maybe having second thoughts about going to Ferrari.
It's a great point. You know, regardless of whether teams are sandbagging, because in the testing they would have done so, and today we can't get a true representative call or statement from the testing for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was uncharacteristically colder than usual. Even though it's winter in Bahrain, they still have pretty hot days, but it was very, very cold. There was a lot of wind in that second session. And that time of the evening is the time that they'll do their qualifying. It's the time they're going to do the race as well. So how representative it is, I'm not entirely sure. But every session, you have to be able to get some data out of it. Mercedes were sensational. And just a couple of days ago, MV, I posted a comment on my social media, and I said, you know, as Red Bull are still out front there, as good as Ferrari looked in testing, there's a team that I don't believe has shown their hand, and that I said was Mercedes. And I think Mercedes have worked out what Red Bull are from last year, and I think Red Bull are just trying to fine-tune a little bit of their aerodynamics. They're going to be right up there tomorrow, I can promise you, but it's magic to see Mercedes up there. Ferrari are sort of okay. Aston are sort of okay, and that's why it's difficult to read too much. And the obvious point is you look at where the Haas team is with Hülkenberg, and then you go, well, Hulkenberg's only a tenth of a second behind Max Verstappen, and you go, okay, now how realistic is this?
Yeah,
How much fuel were they running? But I think it's fantastic just to see that all of a sudden Red Bull have got a few issues. Mercedes look very, very stable. Ferrari look decent. Leclerc didn't have a chance to put in a proper lap during the session. So yeah, may it continue this way. Let's hope for an incredible qualifying tomorrow, which is very weird to say because it's Friday. It feels quite strange.
It's important you mentioned that because this race is actually on a Saturday. It's at 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. The qualifying is on Friday afternoon at 6. Don't forget, don't get caught out, and you have to choose between the rugby at 5 o'clock or the Formula One at 5 at the same time. So I'm caught between a rock and a deep blue sea, but we'll see what happens. I wanted to ask you, Max was complaining quite loudly about the downshifts and the upshifts, and he was complaining about a lot of things in that car that he didn't say a word about in the testing. I wonder if a lot of that is window dressing, or if they actually do, or actually might have a few problems.
Yeah, it's a very good point because you hear the transmission from when the driver speaks to the pit crew, probably either a few seconds or even perhaps even a lap later. And the thing is, we don't follow that car the whole time. So you can't actually hear whether or not they're having these upshifts or downshift issues. But most of this is going to be electronic software issues. So I'm sure, overnight they're perhaps trying a few different things. But, Max knows how he wants his car to be set up. He knows exactly what he's looking for, and he knows when it's not performing at its optimum. So I don't believe they are serious issues. But any issue that you have in Formula One can compound. So, they need to figure these things out sooner than later.
I wanted to say something just now when you spoke about Mercedes. And the thing is, we talk about Lewis Hamilton and Leclerc and Verstappen, all these superstar drivers. But we mustn't forget that the true superstars for me in Formula One to a large extent are the designers. It's Adrian Newey this year, but he's got a formidable opponent in James Allison this year that's come back. And he's designed this absolutely beautifully looking Mercedes, not only in terms of its livery, but it looks like a fast car to me. Whereas the Red Bull looks a bit more ungainly this year. It looks a bit more clumsy. The times prove me wrong, but I mean, I'm very interested to see how these two great minds of Formula One, how this battle between them pans out over the year.
I agree with you. Don't forget, there are going to be a lot of updates that are going to come to all of the cars this year, even within the budget restraints that they have. But yeah, Mercedes got caught. 2021 end of the year was very, very disappointing for them. It must have been incredibly hard on all of the personnel to deal with what happened in Abu Dhabi. And then 2022 and 2023 have just been really nowhere seasons for them. And I'm sure they were under the cosh, never mind from Toto Wolff, but I think from the board of Mercedes as well, and said, listen, you guys have got to get this right. So I think what James Allison has produced, and we saw it when it came out at their launch and in testing, that car looks it does look quick. It looks incredibly stable as well. But it's also the first race of the season. And then Red Bull, goes like, says, basically, Mercedes, you didn't know how to make it work. I'll show you how to make it work. So, it's just fascinating. Perez looked decent today. So, if Perez is sort of up there, then the car is decent. The car is very, very good because that Max is going to be at least half a second faster than him. So when you look at Red Bull, look where Sergio Perez is, and then you get an idea of what that car is going to be like. And from there, add on half a second plus, and then where Max is.
Look, let's have a look at the other teams quickly. My team, of course, McLaren, downplayed their chances again. I was a bit disappointed about that because they did the same thing last year. But last year, they said it was a reason. This year, they were much better. They were in a much better position before the season started. And they were saying quite loudly that Bahrain is not the kind of circuit that suits their car. But they didn't look too bad in the first two test sessions. Norris was last in the second one, but he must have had some problem. Piastri was right up there on medium tires compared to all the other runners that were running on softs.
Yeah, listen, I think that's great. Zach Brown is a very complicated character. There are times, you sit there and you listen to him and you believe everything that comes out of his mouth. And then the other times I just find him quite contradictory. but they learned a lot from last year. They were really a fantastic team towards the end of last year, and I expect them to come out and be within that top 8 from the get-go. And Oscar, as we know, this guy is just top class, and I think Lando and Oscar are going to have a proper fight this year. I wasn't aware that Oscar actually was on the medium tire, but I think that's, I mean, if he was on the medium tire for that run that he posted, you know, and only 4/10 off the pace, then it's outstanding. I know that Lando had a couple of issues, made 1 or 2 mistakes. So, you know, Lando is one of those drivers when he really needs to perform, he knows how to perform. So, you know, I wouldn't look at today as being representative from his point of view, but Oscar right up there, only 4/10 off the Mercedes, I think bodes exceptionally well for McLaren. And I really hope that they have a very powerful and very strong year.
Last year, this time, the surprise package was Aston Martin, you know, and Alonso had a nice long run of podium finishes and everything. They said they don't seem to be that strong this year. Strong, but not as a bigger leap forward as they did last year. They look okay. They look about 5th place, more or less where they belong.
Yeah, I think, listen, I think Lance did a decent job. Fernando, we know, will always, well, probably most of the time be a little bit quicker than Lance. And I tend to agree with you. I think they were actually running a little less fuel than everybody else for them to be up there with the likes of the Mercedes. So, you know, everybody has caught up beautifully in terms of what Red Bull had, and I don't know if Aston Martin have the key people at present for them to have done a jump the way that Mercedes seem to have done the jump. So their updates during the course of the season are going to have to be very crucial for them to, you know, manage to stay within that top 5. I think it's going to be a challenging year for Aston Martin.
Look at the back of the grid. We all expect Haas to be there, and they are there. They seem to be taking a different approach this year. They're only doing long runs, all during testing. All the practice rounds only focused on long runs, or most of it. The new team boss seems to have a kind of a strategy in place to make sure the car doesn't destroy its tires like it did last year. But the surprise for me, and it's a downside surprise, is the fact that Alpine looks to be a bit of a whale, slow as anything.
Yeah, Alpine have got these issues. You know, they've been moaning for a couple of years that the engine isn't up to spec and that they should have some kind of dispensation for them to improve the engine. And everyone else has said, no, you know, everyone's been working on these engines since 2013, so you should actually be right up there. Haas, you know, with a new boss, have they put enough effort into creating this car? I'll be honest, Mvia, I'd much rather have a really fast car that chews its tires than a really slow car that manages its tires. I'd prefer to have a really fast car. And yes, Hulkenberg showed something, but I'm sure he was running very light. I just fear for this team. And on Alpine, I just don't know where their direction is. I know that there's been a lot of boardroom politics, because don't forget, it is also part state owned, and there was rumors that maybe they were going to sell Renault, you know. So I'm not entirely convinced where Alpine's future lies until they get somebody with a Formula One head. You know, the loss of Carlos Ghosn many years ago has impacted that team in a unfortunately very negative way. And you've got 2 really good racing drivers there. So they're going to have to really work hard in order to not have the wooden spoon.
And lastly, I want to talk about the team that caught my eye the most, and that's not because it was so fast, but because it's so green, and that's the Kick. What a color! I mean, if you wanted marketing exposure, talk about, you know, a success. That car is extremely eye-catching, but it seems to be a bit on the slow side as well.
Yes, just, you know, inherent of Sauber. You know, if you go back and look at the history of the Sauber team, they're one of those teams that either come out firing and they do exceptionally well for the first 2 or 3 races, and then all development falls apart, or they come out pretty slow, and then, you know, 6-7 races before the end, all of a sudden they find something, and it's just something that, you know, the new bosses there have to try and turn around, and we all wait for another 2 years before Audi gets there. And will they get there? We're not entirely sure if that's going to happen as well. But yeah, they just do. They look horribly slow. The car's exceptionally bright, but you know, it's one of those things. Again, I'd rather have perhaps a more dull looking car, but a really fast car, as opposed to a very bright car that everyone sees and goes, "Oh my word, look how far back they are." So I think Haas, Alpine, and the stake team are sort of three back teams at the moment, and neither of them wants to finish last, but one of them is going to. That's for sure.
Well, the last team we could talk about is Williams, and I think they were a bit underwhelming. I expected more. They've had a bit of a build-up, you know. They're talking about all the time they spent on the car. They started working on it in March last year already. They seem to have a bit of reliability problems, but that car doesn't seem to be quite there. I know they're going to bring in some more upgrades, but Albon also a bit neutral, sort of non-committal, not too excited. I was a bit disappointed with him.
Yeah, you know, I mean, listen, he was the traditional, what we can say, at least 4/10 or half a second quicker than Sargent, which is what we sort of expect. But I think the positive side for them is that they were substantially ahead of Alpine, Haas, and Stake. So I think that bodes well for them. And I think with James Vowles at the helm there, I think there's a completely different mindset within that team. I really do believe that this is a team that now actually believes they can go out there and never mind worrying about the back end. I think they can really be genuine midfield contenders and maybe sneak in a podium here and there. So I have confidence and faith that that Williams will be relatively strong this year.
Thanks, Sasha. That was a brief overlook of what we're expecting this weekend. Like I said, qualifying is Friday afternoon at 6. We didn't say. What do you think? Who do you think is going to be on pole on Friday? Taking a wild flyer, knowing absolutely nothing about the conditions and the like.
I'm telling you, taking a wild flyer here, I'm going to say Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton on pole.
I have to agree with you. I've just got this feeling that he seems to be, there seems to be something there. I know Russell seems to be struggling a bit more with the car, but Lewis is right up there. So I agree with you. Hamilton on pole tomorrow. Let's see, or on Friday. Let's see if we're right.
Yeah, let's see. Lucky to chat to you. We'll chat again, MBA.
Guys, make sure that you follow at F1 Sasha on Facebook and Twitter and the like, so you keep you updated. He posts quite regular updates. Make sure you don't miss out on those. And we also on our channels make sure to update you, keep you updated. Thanks, Sasha. I appreciate your time, man. It was lekker.
Bye, Dankie.